and behavior, while the value produced is between accomplishment and goals. And we need to analyze in this direction and thereafter move towards this direction. So performance management needs appraisal. It means something which is very specific and much too narrow. It's not a wide-ranged canvas, it's a very narrow canvas. A process of improvement which demands continued attention. Performance appraisal is only a part of the overall performance management process, mind you. It's not everything. Performance management requires a willingness and commitment to focus on improving performance at all levels, timely feedback and constant focus of everyone's attention on the ultimate objective. We need to break performance appraisal orientation to performance management and not only performance appraisal. So this is all I had. I was trying to rush to this time because it's already 8 o'clock. So before I thank you, I now request you to ask any questions which you might be thinking about. A very good question. I must say you have come with a genuine requirement to reflect upon. But let me tell you, the assessment centers are basically used for two purposes. One is for selection and recruitment. Before a person is inducted into an organization, you push him through the assessment center and find out what characteristics he has and what potential he has to work with you. And really, he has the competencies which you are looking for, the skills you are looking for. Example of an assessment center in the best form is the ISSB selection center of the Army. They push everybody who wants to become an officer into an assessment center that is known as ISSB. And the product which comes out from there, I do not need to comment on that. The second part is, if you have doubts on, the potential as well as skills and competencies of anybody, you can put him through a competency assessment center. Alternatively, if you want to identify the competencies and skills of a person, you think he is really worth moving up the ladder 2 to 3 steps, let's assess him and then rate him, rank him, or position him. Even then you can put him into the assessment center. Right? I hope I answered that. Thank you. My friend, actually, assessment center is a very costly affair. You need to have a number of people assessing one person at a time, and normal organizations in Pakistan, except the bigger organizations like Unilever or Procter & Gamble, or you may name the other bigger organizations, they really cannot go for such a kind of, what should I say, lavish, expenditure-oriented, process. They all go through normal interviews and assess the people. Now, even for normal interviews, people are trained on behavioral-based interviewing skills. So you can benefit from them. You don't need to spend that amount where you can really identify a person by pushing him into the behavioral-based interview, which again can be conducted by a number of people. One person, followed by another person, followed by a third person. They sit together and bring out the real competencies of the person. Right? Fine. So, any other questions, gentlemen?
Sir, आपने practice session ये जो distort करते हैं appraisals को. So my question is, it's a very global problem कि biases होते हैं हर जगह पे. When evaluators get bias, and how could we control that, whether they are trained or not? It's a human nature to get bias at some stage. Fine,
a good question again. The thing is, I was mentioning when I was informally discussing with you and the gentleman sitting behind, biases are a part of all human natures. You know, I have my biases. Everybody sitting here will be having his or her own biases, right? So we cannot really take a cognizance of biases only. But the fact is, why do we suggest that anybody who is, assessing others needs to be pushed through training? And a training of the nature which should make him understand that he has to set aside his biases and provide the individual with a justifiable and balanced approach in the process of evaluating and then giving him feedback. One has really to take a lot of, what should I say, strength in understanding that, okay, I have biases, so let me give him the way out. We give the room for others, even in our normal behavior and conduct. So that has to be more reflective in the performance of business. But we cannot really eliminate everything. If one is really lucky to be under a boss who doesn't have biases, he is really a person with tremendous luck. But if a person is reporting to a boss who have many biases, and the gentleman sitting behind you was asking me, you really cannot do anything with him. All you can do is to pray for him.
Or pray for us.
Or pray for yourself. कि अल्लाह मियाँ इस बॉस से बचा के रखे.
Thank you.
My question is, there are a few line managers. There are a few line managers who fill the form in front of the employees. I've seen it. And there are a few line managers who fill the performance appraisal form in front of the employees. And there are a few line managers who fill the form first and then share it with the employees. And then there are also a few line managers who give the form first to the employees and then review their ratings in the same organization under the same performance management system. What's the appropriate method?
You see, again, it is a similar question to biases. All human beings have their own individual way of working. And if you remember what are the human factors, every human is one person. There is no average person. And every person is different from the other persons. You cannot, align anybody with another person. And just to make you believe this, I came through a verse of Holy Quran. I just bring the translation. And the translation says, और हमने तमाम इंसानों को एक दूसरे से मुख्तलिफ पैदा किया. दुनिया में कोई दो शख्स एक जैसे नहीं हैं. तो आप बताइए इसमें कोई डाउट वाली चीज़ रह गई है? Everybody is different, everybody is independent, individual, everybody has his own biases, everybody has his own way of thinking. So you cannot really choose between these. The choice is what comes to you. You have to take it. There is no option. If you go for an option, then actually what is happening is you land yourself into confrontation and a conflict. Now you might be having the capability of, living with the conflict and still making your room, but you may not be having the ability to get into a conflict, and that conflict will actually create ways for your elimination from the organization also. So one has to be very, very thoughtful when seeing what the boss is doing. And of course they say, boss is always right. You cannot tell him, you are wrong and I am right. The moment you will say, you are right and he's wrong, you will land into that situation which I told you earlier, and you will be fighting with him with the end product of a chit in your hand, thank you very much, we don't need you anymore maybe. Or maybe he says, okay, I rate you very low, you are a poor performer. So the choice is with yourself. You cannot choose between the people who are making assessment on you. देखिए वो उसी चीज़ की तो मैंने इनडायरेक्टली जवाब दिया इनको. People are different. मैं कोई चीज़ हो सकता है सारी उम्र छुपा के रखूं, अपने एम्प्लॉई को ना बताऊं. There will be another manager who will call him and tell him, ये देखो तुम्हारा ये हिसाब किताब है, मैंने कितनी अच्छी तुम्हारी जो है ना परफॉर्मेंस रिव्यू लिख दी है, अभी मैं तुम्हें दिखा नहीं रहा, मगर ये पहले मैं HR में दिखा लूँ, ठीक है, वहाँ से हो जाए फिर तुम्हें दे दूँगा. There will be another person who will just write after he is done. There is no choice, you see. It is all depending on the situation.
स्टडी क्या है, लोगों का एक्सपीरियंस क्या है? क्योंकि ओपन में रिएक्टिव होता है हर आदमी ना, हर आदमी अपने आप को बेस्ट समझता है, वो कहता है कि ये इसने मुझे अंडररेट किया. कॉन्फिडेंशियल में उसको पता नहीं चलता कि मुझे में क्या है, वीकनेसेस क्या है. तो क्या है, मतलब कौन सी चीज़, लोगों ने क्या इसको एवेल्यूएट किया है दुनिया में, कि कौन सा मेथड बेहतर है?
ओके, देखें, आप जो कह रहे हैं वो गवर्नमेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में जो ACRs लिखी जाती हैं वो ऐसे ही होती हैं. दे आर नॉट शोन टू द पीपल, दे जस्ट राइट एंड डैमेज देम एट देयर बैक, राइट? दैट्स अ बैड वे ऑफ हैंडलिंग द सबऑर्डिनेट्स. व्हाट द प्रोसेस ऑफ परफॉर्मेंस मैनेजमेंट highlights is you have to give a fair chance. You have to understand the other person is as good a person as you. You do not have to only reflect on his shortcomings, weaknesses, or lose sides. You also have to show him what is, actually the gap in his performance, not his personality. If it is a personality problem, then it is a disciplinary problem, mind you. It is a behavioral issue only. And behavior has to be corrected again through various means. And one of the ways is to motivate the person to understand. Another way is to make him discuss with you why you are behaving like this. Give him the confidence and he'll own his own, shortcomings. And the last is then you take disciplinary against him. So all these things are varying in nature. You cannot tell anybody कि किसको क्या करना चाहिए, क्या नहीं करना चाहिए, प्लस क्या अच्छा है या क्या बुरा है. जो सिस्टम है वो कभी भी नहीं कहता कि आप लोगों से चीज़ें छुपाएं. इट डिमांड्स ट्रांसपेरेंसी. जहाँ तक हो सके बी ट्रांसपेरेंट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आई केम अक्रॉस अ बॉस, ही जस्ट गेव मी दी PPE फॉर्म वी कॉल इट. ही सेड यार खुद ही लिख के ले आओ. लिख के ले आए. He said, where have you rated yourself? I showed him. He started smiling. He said, थोड़ा सा exaggerate कर लिया, थोड़ा ठीक कर दो. So we corrected it, and he said, fine, I'm happy with this. He signs it and he gives you. Even now I have a boss. I had my performance review only last week, and trust me, he said, तारिक साहब, PPE परफॉर्मा एक लफ्ज़ मेरी तरफ से नहीं लिखा जाएगा. आप जो भी चाहते हैं जिस तरह है, you know it better because you are the originator of the system and the guardian of the system. You evaluate yourself and come back to me. So I did everything. There's nothing secret between me and him. And whatever is secret, he told me, फलां मौके पे ये हुआ, फलां मौके पे ये हुआ, and we had a common agreement. No disagreements. This is what is a transparent system. But this is only dependent again on the understanding of the other person and the capability of the man. Various people have varying capabilities. So we cannot, really enforce upon, but we definitely recommend a transparent system, a system in which people should know whatever is being written on them and what they are being rated and how they are being evaluated in an absolutely open form.
Thank you, Mr. Tariq, for a very comprehensive presentation, and especially I'm sure that you must have taken a lot of time in preparing these slides. And thank you for all the good questions. Now I would like to invite Mr. Zafar Aziz Usmani for his concluding remarks and of course some comments on the presentation. So please welcome Mr. Zafar Aziz Usmani.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think right now you will be desperate to hear one concluding remark, which is thank you all very much. But it's not going to be so easy on you for the simple reason that, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Shahida, Institute of Chartered Accountants, for giving me this opportunity of coming, spending some time, listening to a very, very comprehensive presentation from Tariq Saab, and spending, taking this as an opportunity to share some of my learnings on this very complex and a very fascinating subject. Tariq Saab, I think, has done a great job. I'm told that this presentation would be available to all of you on the website. So I would suggest that you can download it. Obviously, in the interest of time, he had to move faster on various slides. There is a lot of thought process and wisdom in these slides. There's a lot of learning that has come in the evolution of the performance management system. And I'm sure when you sit, look at it, reflect, you will find more absorbing ideas from these presentations. I think the success of his presentation was also demonstrated by the number of questions that were asked. I would just like to spend about 5 to 10 minutes with you, with your permission, to share some of the conceptual learnings that I have picked up on this subject. To my mind, performance management is one of the most fascinating dimensions of human resource management. It is one of the simplest and yet diametrically opposite one of the very complex dimension of human resource management. It can be very interesting and it can also be very, very frustrating. This is a science, or you may still want to call it an art, which is still growing, learning. And why it is so fascinating is because it is dealing with the people who are the human beings. Human beings who have such diversities. If somebody asks you how many types of people in this world, you can safely say 5 billion or 6 billion, whatever is the population of this world. Because every creation of God is a unique creation, unique set of genetics, unique set of performance and behavior responses. And you know, I have been a student of performance management for a very long time. And conceptually, you know, I saw one of these movies and I was sharing with Anjum sitting here, if she has seen it and she hasn't. एक इंडियन फिल्म आई थी तारे ज़मीन पर. I don't know आप में से किसी ने देखी है या नहीं देखी. I went there just as a feature film, but it actually shook me. And it raised my real serious doubt on the performance benchmarking and parameters that we set. Because we define one set of parameters and we want to evaluate everyone on that, and each one of these people performing in those positions is a different individual human being with different kind of strengths, with different kinds of weaknesses, different kinds of traits. We brand them on the basis of their performance. We brand them with their ratings, and we question their self-esteem. Because if they are doing something which they are naturally not very good at, not created by God to do that particular aspect of a job very well, then we are branding them and telling them that you are not good. And result is that what is happening exactly jo bata rahe the bachon ka, if you keep on telling them you are not good, you are distorting the personality of that person, and he may be an outstanding person in certain things. But we put him in a job and we give him a benchmark and we start evaluating. Now that's a very, very philosophical and conceptual thing. But the reason I mentioned it was that for you to understand where I'm coming from, why is it such a complex, such a fascinating exercise? Again, you know, taking the benefit of spending some moments with Anjum here, who is a human resource manager at the Young Group, I was running my thought process and I just asked her, I said a little earlier that it is one of the simplest and the easiest process. And you can ask me, how can performance management be easiest? And I give it to you that I gave it to her. I said, you are all working in different capacities. Some of you may have, you know, 10, 20 people reporting to you. Some may have less. And even if you don't have a lot of people reporting to you, you have a lot of colleagues. Try and do this exercise tonight. Just pick up a piece of paper and write down the names of the people working with you. Okay? In certain position. Pick up any position. And then do a very simple rating. Who are you think the best performers? Who are you think the middle performers? And who would you rate as not so good performers? Right? How long will it take you to do that exercise? 10, 15 people, maybe 10 minutes. Right? Now once you have done that exercise, And you know what you've done? You've done the most precise exercise. Because now I would like you to work back. Why is it that you have selected Mr. A as number 1? Now you start thinking. And you know what? If you go through each of these names or 2, 3 top names and start jotting down the points on a side, you would have come up with a performance parameter, performance criteria, key performance indicators, KPIs, KPAs, whatever you want to call it. You have, in 10 minutes, defined KPIs for a certain position. And you have rated people against those KPIs. But when you were doing this exercise, you were doing it just from the back of your mind, and your results will be 99% accurate. Now you put those criteria, take those people and start doing the same thing, and you will find that by and large, and run it on any number of people you want to. I've done it a number of times, and people have been fascinated by this very simple exercise that, oh my God, it is such a simple thing. If it is such a simple thing, then what is the complexity about it? The issue is that you're dealing with human beings. If it was such a simple thing, and if I was to ask you that tomorrow you go and call these 10 people and tell them, look, I think that you are the top performers, you are the number 2 performer, and you are the bottom performer, how do you think will be the acceptability of the things? The people you say top will be very happy. Middle one may not be okay, you know, I don't know why is that you have graded him? And the bottom one will say, this is stupid. You haven't even thought about it. And I don't accept your evaluation. Why? Very simple question, a very simple paradigm. The challenge. Self-perception versus the reality. There is always a big gap between self-perception and reality. And this is a human factor. सुना होगा आपने, आईना झूठ बोलता है. What does that mean? When I look into the mirror, I see myself as I would like to see maybe 30 years ago or 40 years ago, a young, smart person, which I don't know whether I ever was, but let's assume I was. And that's what appears to me. When you look at me, or somebody else outside looks at me, okay, here is a man, whatever, gray hair, and you know, oh my God, what's so interesting about him? And there is this serious gap. ये appearance से आगे चले, किसी से आप पूछ लें, everybody will say, how are you performing? I am performing outstanding. How would you rate yourself in the job? I am doing a great job. And I'll just share with you. In the KESC, the organization that I joined a few months back, I called all the directors and general managers, 140 of them, in 3 sessions. And I did a very simple exercise with them. I went to each one of them and asked them, what are you doing? I am engineer doing this and this. I am on the transmission side. I am on the generation side. And I said that please, after I introduced myself to everyone and everyone introduced everyone to the class, I gave them a simple, जैसा आपका writing pad यहाँ रखा है ना छोटा सा. I said, okay, here are the 5 ratings. 5 is an outstanding, 4 is very good, 3 is as expected, 2 is less than expected, and 1 is pathetic, very poor. Give yourself a number, the thing that you're doing. And you know, it was a very simple exercise, the entire class, I said, how many of you have rated yourself 5? And I'm not going to even look at it. How many you think are you doing 5? And you know, about 20–30% people raise their hands. How many of you think you're doing 4? Another 50% raise their hand. 3, kam ho gaya. 2, 1 tak 0. Okay? So I said, okay, let's look at this average. What you're saying is, as a class, on an average, you're performing 4, which is very good. Okay? Now I want you to come and look at why this any organization, and that's something I wanted to share with you. Any organization, the purpose of performance appraisal process, performance management process, is to enhance the value addition of one of the critical resources of the organization, which is people, which is the human resource. So, if human resource is doing very well, it should have some impact in the organization. So I said, look, Let's look at KSC. Who are the key stakeholders of KSC? किसी भी organization के, and you will eventually come out with 3 stakeholders. One will be the customer, the second will be the shareholder, or whichever order you want to put, and third will be the employees. Then I said, let's do one more exercise. Let's look at each of the stakeholders. And you know, I said, okay, let's look at the customers. How do you think they are looking at KSC? What kind of a performance KSC is bringing to them in terms of their happiness? Where would they rate? Customers are happy. I said, you know, I'm obviously, the answer was very honest, realistic. Neji, how many 5? No hands. How many 4? Maybe 1 or 2. How many 3? Maybe 10, 20%. Majority were rating a 2 at 1. Kiji, customers are not happy with us. Okay, so 1.5. Come to the shareholders. What is it that will make shareholder very happy? Massive dividend. आपने सबने माशाल्लाह massive investment किया हुआ equity market में. What you want to see is आपका जो share है वो बहुत dividend raise कर रहा हो. आपका जो share है उसकी value चढ़ रही हो, so that you go and proudly tell everyone that I invested in X company. Look, I got 40% dividend. मैंने 100 rupees का share लिया था, वो अब 300 का पहुंच गया. Wow! And you're very, very happy. What's happening now? What do you think are the shareholders of KSC looking at KSC at? क्या रेटिंग है उनकी? 10 रुपए का शेयर 3 रुपए पे पड़ा हुआ है, लॉस बना रहे, सदियों से डिविडेंड नहीं मिला है. What do you think they'll? Oh, very low, 1, 1.5. Then it's a third, the most important, is where everybody gets excited. Employees, how are they rating KSC? 5, 4, no way, 3, some, 2, many, 1, many. So 1.5. So I just put these ratings. Shareholder, 1.5. Customer, 2. Employees, 1. Now I bring out your ratings. 5 and 4. So how come that you're doing such a great job? This is self-perception. We're doing such a great job. I'm an engineer and 20 years I have put my blood into the system. रात तक मैं काम करता हूँ. इतना outstanding काम कर रहा हूँ मैं. This entire leadership sitting here, 140 of you who are actually running KSC, you rate yourself such an outstanding level. And you're saying, I haven't even gone to ask a customer, वो शायद 0 करेगा या minus करेगा, जिसके 12 घंटे बिजली जाती है. Ask him for a rating और वो आपको, he'll run after you. Come for a rating, let me tell you. So what actually happens is that there was a shock. And this is where the performance, जो मैं आपसे बात कर रहा हूँ, the challenge of human resource management in performance management system is reconciling the self-perception with reality. और ये तो institutional basis पे था, it was easy. जिस वक्त आप individual के साथ कर रहे होते हैं, it becomes a great challenge. And if you ask me, if this is, this is why it is such a simple thing. You can run it, you can do a fairly accurate exercise, and it's a very complex thing, because when you really want to, here is KSC again. If you really want to do a refined exercise, you want to talk to the people, it's very difficult to convince them. Performance management system ideal will be where you give the person that form and ask him to fill it in, and he cannot overrate himself or cannot underrate himself, because there are factors which have comparative evaluation levels. And you ask him, flowing from the goal setting process, flowing from his job description, you look at different aspects of his job and ask him, please rate yourself. For instance, if my goal was to increase sales by 10%, and I have done only 100, and the rating criteria is if the goals have been achieved at 10% higher, then you get a 4 rating, 20% higher, then you get a 5 rating, and if you have achieved goals of sale of 100, then it is 3. And if it is